Good morning, colleagues. Mr. Chair, let me first start by thanking you and your committee counsel for your work on this bill and accept the committee amendments identified in the mock-up. I also want to thank Scott from the Public Investors Arbitration Bar Association for his time over the weekend to help improve our bill, and we'll continue to work on addressing investor protections and remedies. We all know the challenges that small businesses, the backbone of our economy, have in gaining access to capital. They typically can't gain capital from institutional investors or venture capitalists, typically relying on credit cards, home equity lines, and personal finances. Through recent technologies, crowdfunding has become a new way to obtain seed capital. Equity-based crowdfunding was recently permitted under the so-called Federal Jobs Act, but unfortunately this was a law that was roundly criticized as too risky for investors and unworkable for businesses. Our bill establishes requirements for equity crowdfunding that allow businesses to find investors while establishing new protections for unsophisticated investors not currently in federal law. Colleagues, you may remember last year this committee voted unanimously to support the prior version of this bill, AB 722, which had included investor protections, including requiring businesses to qualify for permits issued by the Department of Business Oversight, not allowing investments over $5,000 during a 12-month period, compared to federal current law that allows investors to invest up to $100,000, and a requirement that companies must provide comprehensive disclosures as well as have fiduciary obligations to investors. Now, since then, our chairman has suggested amendments that I'm happy to take, including a requirement of a third-party portal to be an intermediary with investors, as well as, in addition to prohibitions against face-to-face and telephone solicitations, there are additional significant conditions on general solicitations, including the review and registration of advertising copy. In summary, our bill will enhance investor protections while assisting small businesses who need capital to survive and create jobs. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our witnesses.
Thank you. First witness in support, please.
Scott Hauke, Small Business California, and also a small business owner. We're here to ask for your support of this bill. As the Assemblyman says, small business has problems getting capital, especially under $1 million, particularly $250,000 to $500,000. We think this bill will help raising equity capital, and we've put in a number of protections which Assemblyman Chu mentioned, so we ask for your support.
Thank you. Your next witness, please.
Good morning. Mark Hiraiti, board member of Small Business California and a securities lawyer. The Title III Federal Jobs Act provides, it's been roundly criticized, unworkable restrictions on companies' ability to advertise, and at the same time, investor risks as a result of exempting completely from SEC review any of these offerings. AB 2178 provides responsible limitations on advertising, as well as provides DBO review, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness, please.
Good morning. I'm Julie Barnes with Your Story Gold, and I own a branding company. I've been in business for 3 years. I'm also here on the board of NAMBO Sacramento, which is the National Association for Women Business Owners, and I believe this bill would greatly not only impact me and my business growth, but our membership base as well, which is primarily smaller businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness is in support. If you could just give your name and your organization, please.
Simone Viana. I'm an interior designer, and I am a NABO member as well. And I'm here to support this bill because we really need a lot of help. And I believe in Sacramento, I believe the small business.
Thank you. Next witness, please.
Shobha Malarpu, and I own a cybersecurity services company called Anvaya Solutions, and I've been in business for 8 years. And I'm one of the small business owners who have utilized home equity loan, credit cards, and personal finance. And I believe this, and I'm also a board member of NABO, and I believe that this bill will greatly enhance my ability to get funding.
Thank you. Anyone else in support? All right, seeing none, is there opposition? Could you make room for the opposition, please?
Thank you. I'm Scott Bernstein here on behalf of the Public Investors Arbitration Bar Association. PIABA is a group of several hundred lawyers around the country who represent defrauded investors, many of whom, a large percentage of whom are elderly and all too often have lost a significant portion of their life savings. It's a particularly dangerous time now, and a great time for Ponzi schemes because interest rates are so low, and you have people who are really panicked about the lack of income on their savings. So PIABA is hopeful that with some changes in some improvements in investor remedies and the deterrence that results from that we would be able to go neutral on the bill. Right now, the remedies, if you have essentially the remedies as they exist now are the sound of one hand clapping. There are too many outs for a business bent on depriving the investor of any recourse. So you have two kinds of businesses that are raising money. You have the legitimate ones who we really would like to see get funded, as long as they're not putting people at excessive risk by doing so, and you don't have investors for whom the investment is wholly unsuitable, putting a significant portion of their savings into those. And then there are the cookie-cutter scam deals. The problem is that when you loosen things up, you can create an environment for the cookie-cutter scams, and we've seen this play out. You know, if you've been around long enough to remember thermal fax machines with a continuous roll of smelly paper. You remember the limited partnership scandals of the late '80s, and you know, and you remember there were scams in the '90s. There were the bucket shops and so forth. These are recurring things that happen. So PIABA has proposed a few changes that would make for meaningful remedies and therefore meaningful deterrence. One is a one-way attorney fee shift, so that we would be on a par with all of the Uniform Act states, which is 30 some odd states. A one-way shift would enable people with smaller losses to get counsel, but it would have to be a mandatory shift. And we've talked with the sponsors, and I think we're on the I think and hope we're on the same page on that. Another one would be a mandatory multiple damages provision, just to telegraph to the scam artists that we're really serious. We want them to comply. We want them to make a full and fair disclosure and to act in accordance with whatever suitability obligations are imposed by the terms of a permit, for example. And thirdly, we want to see something in there to prevent the ability of a promoter or somebody who's engaging in some wrongdoing to borrow something from my favorite Martian, to step on a crack and say it doesn't count. And they can do that with various means of monkeying around with dispute resolution. So we'd like to say that have a provision that the permit will not be granted if there is a provision, a forced arbitration clause, a provision for, say, a choice of law or a choice of forum that's other than a California forum. There are a number of gimmicks that people can try to use and put into the fine print, and there's a lot of fine print in the stack of subscription documents. But we'd like to see a scenario where if you have those provisions in there, you won't get a permit. I believe that, notwithstanding Concepcion, we're not. This would not be an attempt to invalidate an agreement to arbitrate, or a quote-unquote agreement to arbitrate that would otherwise be enforceable under the Federal Arbitration Act. Rather, it's simply a statement that if you have such a provision, you're not getting a permit. So that's our position.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other opposition? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the committee. And thank you, Mr. Chu, for meeting with us and going through the issues. When this passed out of Judiciary last year, there was a promise from the author to work on some of the issues that we were able to put in this year. That had not happened by the time that the bill died in Assembly Appropriations, so we appreciate that. Willing to work with us on some of those. I think that these are the kinds of transactions that are happening and will continue to happen. I recognize the concern about the Federal Jobs Act, that maybe it's not as much coverage as possible, and what we're trying to do is build in as much of the protections and checkpoints as we can at this point. But to the opposition's point, we see scams all of the time, and some of them, for anybody who's sophisticated, they're pretty irritating, but the fact that they keep happening again and again and again just shows that at some level that they're working. And I would hate to do anything here, and I know the author agrees with me on this, that is proliferating someone's ability to scam. And I think this is an area that we all should keep an eye on, as these kinds of transactions are happening throughout the economy, and make sure that we are being responsible to our constituents in giving them appropriate remedies, giving them appropriate checks and balances in these very small transactions such as this. And that is why there's a recommended action is do pass as amended to appropriations. Any other, Mr. Wagner?
Yeah, I want to pick up on that, because I think the chairman is absolutely right. There are the scams that Mr. Bernstein talks about out there, and they've been out there forever. Well, at least since the fax machine was invented. And, in the 90s, after the fax machine was firmly ensconced in the practice of law, I did a lot of securities litigation myself. So this is a problem that exists, and it's been out there for a long time. And so I echo the chairman's concerns, and I echo Mr. Bernstein's concerns. And I guess I would ask the author, I don't know that I'd subscribe to everything that was said as potential remedies, but, as I said on the floor the other day in relation to a different piece of legislation, I'm a big fan of attorney's fees shifting provisions and loser pays provisions. I don't think I'd have a problem, for example, with if this is a California company and a California permit, then a California venue. Have you considered those? What's wrong with those? Is that something you're open to? What's your thought on those issues?
So as I had said at the beginning of my comments, we have been starting to have conversations with Mr. Bernstein and are very open to a variety of different possibilities in this area. I think what was proposed was a one-way mandatory attorney fee shift, which it'd be good to get additional feedback on that. I'm not sure if that's something that you would be supportive of, but from my perspective, let me make it very clear. I certainly don't want, I don't think anyone in this committee wants these crowdfunding mechanisms to be used for consumer scams. So our goal is really how we get there, but I'm open to a variety of different possibilities.
And the bill died in approach last year. What's going to keep it from dying in approach this year? What's different?
We're obviously working to streamline it to make sure that it doesn't. I also want to say, in case it wasn't clear, this was Mr. Pereira's bill last year, and the chairman had referenced some conversations that were had with the previous author, which we worked through to put additional consumer protections in this year. Again, we'll keep moving through the process.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Thank you. Mr. Chu, you may close.
I just want to thank Small Business California, Mr. Hauge, the over 24 small business associations around the state, as well as labor organizations that support this. We will obviously continue to work to make sure that our consumers are protected, and respectfully ask for your vote.
Thank you. And I'm still looking for a motion and a second. The motion is do pass as amended to appropriations. So we have a motion by Mr. Wagner and a second by Mr. Chow. Call the roll, please.
Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Wagner? Aye. Wagner, aye. Alejo? Chow? Chow, aye. Chu?
Aye.
Chu, aye. Gallagher? Aye. Gallagher, aye. Garcia? Aye. Garcia, aye. Holden? Aye. Holden, aye. Mainshine? Aye. Mainshine, aye. Ting? Aye. Ting, aye.
That bill is out.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. So we are still waiting for Mr. Thurmond, item number 6, AB 2756. In the meantime, can we add absent members to the bills we've heard so far? Start with the consent, which also includes AB 2249, our number 3. I move that to consent. Call the absent members.
Alejo? Gallagher? Aye. Gallagher, aye. Holden? Aye. Holden, aye. Ting? Aye. Ting, aye.
Item 2, AB 2244, Mr. Gatto. Call the absent members.
Alejo? Gallagher?
I'm sorry, which one is this?
Item number 2, AB 2244.
Aye.
Gallagher, aye. Holden? Aye. Holden, aye.
Item number 5, AB 2611, Mr. Lowe's bill.
Alejo. Gallagher. Gallagher, aye. Holden. Ting. Ting, aye. Holden, aye.
Holden's an aye. No.
This was one where your recommendation was to make sure that the standard was set high. I don't want to see this bill undermine efforts of previous bills to use body camera footage or not be able to have access to it. So I think what you were trying to do with your...
And we had provided some amendments that the author took to try and address some of those issues. Okay, thank you. So item number 7, AB 2853, Mr. Gatto's second bill.
Alejo. Gallagher. Gallagher, aye.
Okay, so we're still missing Mr. Alejo to vote on bills, and we're missing Mr. Thurman. Do we have an idea where he is?
2 or 3 minutes. He's on his en route from the train station. You got to be walking in there.
All right. So as we wait, why don't we take a bit of a recess? Let's recess for about 10 minutes so people can, but if everyone would come back in and we can finish our business. So we are now on recess.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Thank you for your accommodation, and sorry for the delay. It's my pleasure to present AB 2756. This is the oil and gas enforcement and discussion, and from my standpoint, this is a public safety bill. This is a bill that allows us to address incidences where there are oil and gas incidents and leaks, and to create safety opportunities for the citizens of California. This bill will enhance the division's authority to regulate oil and gas and to increase fines and enforcement. As many of you know, for many years, Dogger has been considered an agency that has no real ability to promote enforcement. This bill gives it a framework for real enforcement, including the ability to assess fines that can serve as an incentive to those who might be engaged in an incident to expedite the process of ensuring that the incident gets resolved quickly. As we've seen in recent history, we've seen leaks and other incidents that have left Californians homeless, needing to be relocated, subject to headaches and nausea and other illness. And this bill seeks to address that and to make sure that an operator moves quickly to resolve an incident. The bill also gives the opportunity to take some of the money from the fines to be used for environmental projects that have an environmental benefit. It sets out a whole process for hearings and appeals for the operator to make their case and to make their concern and to render justice in the situation when these questions come up. I have with me today 2 great witnesses, the Director of the Department of Conservation, David Munn, and Bill Aliud, who is here to provide further emphasis on this bill.
Thank you. Your first witness, please.
Chair and members, David Bunn. I'm the Director of the Department of Conservation. Thank you for the time to provide some input on this bill. AB 2756 is sponsored by the department, and a little quick background. Last fall, the department put out a renewal plan, basically for the multi-year effort to overhaul the Division of Oil and Gas and geothermal regulation. And the purpose of that is really to build a credible, effective department that protects the environment, takes care of public health, and allows us to produce oil and gas in the state in a safe way. Key components of that renewal plan are to overhaul a number of regulations. We have at least 3 regulatory packages moving forward, and through statute to make some key changes. This bill is part of that plan. It's basically to strengthen our ability to enforce the law when there's egregious violations. And it really does 2 things, this bill, key things. And one is that it makes the penalty, allows us to basically issue a violation for each day that there's a violation, not just per single violation. Actually, this prior to SB4, the fracking bill a few years ago, that was pretty much the understanding, but it wasn't explicit. And since that bill got more explicit regarding fines for well stimulation, it actually then, since this one wasn't so explicit, it actually added some ambiguity to our general enforcement provision. And what this law really does is it makes it quite clear that we can charge fines on a per-day basis. And what that allows us to do is when we do issue a fine, that people don't read the fine in the paper and just go, well, that's kind of a joke. I mean, that the violation is actually is a deterrent. I mean, that the fines are a deterrent, and in fact, that they match the violation. The other key thing that this bill does is it actually allows us to take up 50% of the money from the funds from the penalties and direct it to projects that benefit the impacted communities. So those are really the 2 key issues. And there are lots of little things. People have raised little issues about due process, this and that. And frankly, all those are just that. They're little, basically trying to create doubt about the bill. But other than those things, what the bill does is actually clarifies. In fact, we think it's in the industry's interest the way that it clarifies the process of appeals. It clarifies language about all of these issues. In fact, gives us flexibility in determining the level of fine, so it's actually an appropriate level and someone's not fined an excessive amount. But those are, frankly, the minor things that we're frankly clarifying and improving in the Act. But the 2 core things are really allowing us to make the fine commensurate with the violation, and 2, allowing the impacted communities to get some benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness, please.
I'm Bill Alio with the Environmental Working Group in support. It's a bit ironic. We are not listed on the analysis. It's a logistical glitch. We should have been. I met with Mr. Thurman's office about 3 months ago, urging him to do this bill, take on the bill at the request of the administration because it's important. I think the analysis and the director's comments speak to the details. I'd like to just add some important context. I'm the advocate who's worked the longest with and against doggers since 2011. We needed the legislature to get down on them and do SB4 and other bills to make sure they were doing their job in terms of basically regulating the industry. And now, in their 100-year anniversary was last year, I think the administration, the management there has been self-reflective and said, what can we really do to make this agency a full-bodied state regulatory body like Fish and Game or the Board of Forestry? And they're doing that. They've introduced a bill that is being heard in ESTM committee this afternoon, and then there's this bill by Mr. Thurman. I think it's important to give them the tools they need to do the job that they should have been doing all along and now want to do. We urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in support?
Kelly Dale on behalf of California League of Conservation Voters in support.
Thank you. Anyone else in support?
Corey Bolus on behalf of Environmental Defense Fund in support.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, opposition.
How you doing? Mr. Chairman, members, Theo Pejos with the California Independent Petroleum Association. The irony here is that we agree with maybe 75–80% of what's being said. We do recognize that much of this bill was aimed at sort of taking on a real enforcement, more flexible enforcement, give the department some flexibility in enforcing the act. But if we just focus, for instance, on the one provision that creates the most heartburn for us, it has to do with how and when the severity of those full penalties are applied. So you're going essentially from a standard currently where you're saying $25,000 per violation. Okay, we are exponentially increasing that to $25,000 per violation per day. Even that we can accept conceptually, if you're applying that, like the department says and wants to do, to the most egregious violations, knowingly, willingly, huge harm to the environment, those type of violations. That's how civil penalties or administrative penalties are levied in the Fish and Game Code relative to oil spills, to OSHA, relative to labor violations, to our entire penal code. You don't just go, as one of my colleagues says, from 0 to 100 miles an hour in 2 seconds flat. We have to tier these and we had an interesting discussion in natural resources, but to take the language that says that the director shall consider these mitigating factors and then saying they may consider, you are now changing the criteria so they can ignore. Now, I don't think this director or this supervisor would ignore, but I can't vouch for all future directors or supervisors. So you go here from shall to may. They may then ignore any mitigating factors when applying the highest levies, which again has gone from $25,000 per incident to $25,000 per incident to $25,000 per day per incident. So again, huge increase. We just want to see some controls on when those strongest levies are applied. There has been some discussion between us and the author's office, as well as us and the sponsors, about going back from may to shall, and then also putting in some type of tiered levels of penalties consistent with all the other body of law that this legislature has ever passed. And that's really the basis for the thrust of our opposition. We think this is fixable. We actually think this is fixable today, but we will take some commitments to take part of this, and we'll look forward to working with the author in the future. But this is not brain science. We can do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chair, members, Brian White here on behalf of the Western States Petroleum Association. We have an opposed unless amended position on the bill. We actually suggested some amendments to the author in our letter, and as my colleague stated, some of those are very similar to suggesting that we have a graduated approach to the actual penalties. Right now, there's a lot of uncertainty in existing law about how penalties will be applied. This bill makes that situation even less certain. There was concerns about the due process. We do still think there's some lack of due process in this bill. But if we focus on the penalties just for a second, existing law in Cal OSHA has graduated penalties for administrative actions, for medium violations and significant violations. We should base those violations based on the threat to human health and the environment. If there's an immediate threat, then yes, and that's a significant violation, then that should be the highest penalty you can think to suggest, which is $25,000 per day per violation. We're not here to defend irresponsible operators. We're here to make sure that the process is actually fair, and actually there's some due process. So I think we had some discussions about that with the author staff and with Dogger. And if we can get to that point where we can have that discussion, we can remove our opposition to this bill. But currently, the way it's written, we just think there is really a lack of due process in the bill, and the penalties are not reflective of the severity of the violation. So for that, we are opposed, but we're willing to work with the author and Dogger to address those concerns.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition?